In our post-rotation Journey Together format arriving on March 27th, a Road deck is just another name for a deck that loses to Dragapult EX. While the Pokemon Company is printing more 70 hit point basics these days, Dragapult can still Hawlucha 10 onto a bench basic, then beat it off with Phantom Dive. In the past, a Road deck could handle a dominant Stage 2 deck with Devolution and Expert Tactics. Well, Dragapult wants to evolve through the Stage 1 Dracloak to draw cards, so that's a non-starter. And because Dragapult has a built-in bench barrier, damaging more than one each turn is almost impossible. Add on the fact that Dragapult deals 200 damage and doesn't have an ability for Frostlass to feast on, and you have something that is an auto-lose for pretty much any fun deck you want to build. Thankfully, while Dragapult will be one of the top 3 decks post-rotation, there are other decks. And any multi-prize deck that can't spread damage has a tough time against single-prize decks that can take big one-hit KOs or utilize annoying strategies. And that's where we begin with a very annoying strategy. At least in Japan, the Road deck that's been performing the best is Tyranitar. Like Hannah Montana, it's the best of both worlds. Put it in your active spot, they can't play any items. Attack for a Darkness and a Colorless, not only do you deal 150 damage, but you mill the top 2 cards of their deck. Add the fact that Tyranitar itself has 190 hit points, and you have a strong Road deck. Unfortunately, the pre-evolutions leave much to be desired. The best Larvitar is the one coming in Journey Together, which deals 20 damage for 2 colorless, but has a coin flip chance of discarding an energy from your opponent's active. The Pupitar, meanwhile, exists. There is no optimal one. You just play this one, and maybe one game out of 100 you'll KO a 60 hit point basic. With the loss of Dark Patch due to rotation, attacking with Tyranitar isn't as easy as tricking people into subscribing to you on YouTube. Reversal Energy is the obvious choice here. Go behind on prizes, attack with Tyranitar for a single energy attachment. Otherwise, you're manually attaching 2 Darkness Energy and hoping they can't string together KOs. I know it's a bit of a slower card, but I didn't see Crispin run a whole lot in Japan with Tyranitar. If you wanted to try Crispin, it opens up the possibility of using Mimikyu as a wall at the end of a game, hopefully once you've milled out your opponent's counters. Because Tyranitar either needs to get it up quickly or prevent them from beating you off, the aspects of choice here are Grand Tree first with Neutralization Zone second. While Grand Tree does also help your opponent evolve their Pokemon, getting that item lock potentially as early as turn 2 is awesome. Otherwise, there's the good old pray you mill their stadiums and drop Neutralization Zone at the end of the game strategy. Looking at the various lists for Tyranitar, it looks like there's 3 variations. And because I'm a crazy person, I'll show you all of them and include lists for them either in the description or comments. YouTube has a character limit for descriptions, so blame them for any issues. Anyways, the first build is just a straight Tyranitar list. Nothing fancy whatsoever. Fezandipiti draws cards after someone's knocked out, Budew tries to buy you a turn, Munkidori helps spread damage, and the other Tyranitar is a way to deal 230 damage for reversal energy at the cost of milling yourself. If you want a bit more control over your draws and reversal energy turns, pair it with Pidgeot EX and Dusknoir. Having 3 different Stage 2 lines is rarely a good idea, but Grand Tree does at least make things easier. If you find that this list is too busy and inconsistent, cut the Dusknoir line and add in more energy, more consistency, and maybe Neutralization Zone instead of Grand Tree. And finally, pairing Tyranitar with the Dunsparce. The Dunsparce is your draw Pokemon while also offering up the possibility of attacking with the Dunsparce EX, which does 60 damage times the number of EX Pokemon on your opponent's side of the field. This is also where Neutralization Zone shines, protecting all of your non-rule box Pokemon against damage from EXs. To quickly highlight some other cards, that baby Tyranitar can punish Area 0 decks by dealing 270 damage for 1 energy if they have a full bench. While Luxurious Cape boosts Tyranitar's hit points by 100, if it's knocked out by damage from an attack, it gives up an extra prize card. A couple other cards to think about are Handheld Fan to control their energy, and Calamitous Wasteland to make retreating even tougher. All in all, Tyranitar seems decent, just avoid Dragapult if you can. If you've watched any of my other videos, you know how much I enjoy spreading damage counters like their cheeks. Well, Lycanroc does 40 base damage plus 40 more for each damage counter on your opponent's active. For all my math challenged viewers, I put a little cheat sheet on screen. Basically, get 6 damage counters on something and Lycanroc can one-shot it. Because if it has 60 on it already, 60 plus 280 equals 340, which is enough to KO Charizard EX, Dragapult EX, and pretty much everything in Standard. Yeah, math whiz here. One fun way to accumulate damage counters is with Spike Energy. Attach it to a Pokemon, take a hit to the face, and Spike Energy retaliates with 2 damage counters for each one attached. As a bonus, Lycanroc accelerates 2 spike energy from the discard pile upon evolution. You still need to make sure you're manually attaching an energy each turn, but powering yourself up is never a bad thing. Unless you're Trunks fighting against Cell, because then you get too bulky and can't hit anything. In a perfect world, these 2 cards alone are enough to win. Except in a perfect world, Dragapult doesn't exist, so you need to rely on Frostlass as well. I've had a lot of success with Frostlass Budew Munkidori in the past, and Lycanroc just gives it a great finisher. The core of the deck remains the same. You still use Budew to item lock and slow them down, while Frostlass and Munkidori work together to send damage counters to your opponent's side of the field. With Lycanroc, you no longer have to worry about playing the Skin Flute to bring basics down, as spreading damage counters properly will allow you to take KOs on Pokemon without abilities. Looking at the list, it's a 3-3 Frostlass with a 3-2 Lycanroc. Unfortunately, Lycanroc isn't able to go for a full 4-4 line here. There's just not enough space. The one Ursaluna EX is a great endgame attacker who you have to hope you don't start. And Unfair Stamp is your A-Spec as just another way to draw cards and annoy your opponent. Legacy Energy could be another option to maybe extend the game an extra turn though, so keep it in mind. If you're wondering about Maractus, it's merely a way to trap someone in the active while you enact your wacky spread strategy. Other considerations are Mimikyu as another way to wall your opponent while using Munkidori shenanigans to win the game. You could also swap out Morty's Conviction for Iris's Fighting Spirit. Both get spike energy in the discard and draw you cards, but Iris doesn't rely on your opponent having bench Pokemon in play. And for those who want to make a more Lycanroc only deck without Munkidori or Budew, you'll want to overload it with Vengeful Punch. It's weaker, but requires a lot less thinking. Now, to be fair, one of the other partners for Lycanroc is Dragapult. Obviously, Dragapult spreads damage counters, then Lycanroc can one-shot Pokemon normally out of range for the worst thing to happen to single prize decks since ADP. Just be aware that if you play Lycanroc Dragapult, a brand new PTCGL bug will appear every day until you stop. I mean, that'll happen regardless, but I'll blame you instead of the dev. Just like that Netflix movie, I enjoy giving myself hot Frosties. And Magmortar Budew is basically just a hot version of Frostlass Budew. Is it better? I'm inclined to say no. But you didn't click on this video to hear about good decks. You came to watch a boomer whack off, and I always deliver what you want. As a refresher, Magmortar increases the damage your opponent's burn Pokemon take during checkup by 30, and it stacks. Volcanion EX burns your opponent's active when it's in the active. There's clearly a lot of synergy here, but with both Magmortar and Volcanion having 3 energy attack costs in a world without Magma Basin, you need something else. Enter Budew and Handy Fan. Budew does the item lock thing, making it harder for them to switch out and use things like Counter Catcher and Prime Catcher. And if they hit into a Budew with Handheld Fan attached, you can send an energy to someone like Latias EX who doesn't attack. Personally, I don't have much faith in Magmortar Budew. Like, I understand, there's a fun strategy here. But even with 4 Magmortar down and a Budew attacked, they're only taking 150 damage in addition to the item lock. Sure, if they don't switch or retreat or evolve, then they take another 140 damage the following checkup. But it's a lot of ifs and buts, and the only buts I like belong to Glaceon and Pikachu. But if things go right, they can't really use Fezandipiti to draw cards since they're being KO'd between turns, and Ursaluna EX is always a great finisher. Because Magmar has 90 hit points, you can't use Poffin to find them, so Precious Trolley as the A-Spec instead of Unfair Stamp isn't a terrible idea. You could also play Calamitous Wasteland to try and prevent retreats, or Pokemon League HQ plus his Pathra EX alongside Crushing Hammer and Handy Fan to make attacking more difficult. Speaking of big butts, Wailord Baxcalibur requires a lot to go right to win. But if it does, you can laugh maniacally as a Raging Bolt player has to rethink their life choices. Journey Together Wailord does 10 base damage plus 50 more for each water energy attached to it. Go behind on prizes, manually attach a reversal energy, and, well, you can't actually attack. You still need to accelerate 1 energy with Baxcalibur, meaning Wailord is dealing 210 damage. That's enough to one-shot Fezandipiti, but you'll need 7 energy on Wailord to KO Dragapult and Charizard. Luckily, there's Regigigas as a backup attacker who can KO those 2 for 4 water energy, not 7. The first thing you should do when playing this deck on PTCGL is pray to Arceus. There's a 2-2 line of Baxcalibur with 2 Rare Candy. Because Irida rotates, you have to rely on Arven and TM Evolution to get everyone in play. There's also Revavroom for card draw and Superior Energy Retrieval to get energy back. If you find Fezandipiti gets knocked out way too much, remove it for another copy of Super Rod or maybe Chien-Pao EX or Inferior Energy Retrieval. But if you're somehow looking at the list and thinking it's far too consistent, remember that Heavy Ball is also gone. So if you prize both Frigibacks, just concede and delete the deck and never play it again. There's not a lot of whacking off you can do with Wailord. You already have one Luxurious Cape, which boosts Wailord to 340 hit points, an absolutely crazy number. Heavy Baton could be a way to keep energy in play, as both Wailord and Regigigas have a 4 retreat cost. And I don't know, this deck is super sketchy. You could chuck in an Ursa Luna or something, I guess. Journey Together is very much lacking in good road decks, and this definitely proves it. After watching several people in Japan whack off, I found someone crazy enough to take Metagross to a gym battle. Not to be confused with Steven's Metagross coming in Destined Rivals at the end of May, Journey Together Metagross does 130 base damage. That's terrible on a stage 2. But if you have a Beldum and a Metang on your bench, that jumps to 280 for just 2 Psychic Energy. Yeah, it takes a lot of things to go right, but that is the definition of a road deck. Presented without any changes from the one successful list, you play a full 4-4-4 line of Metagross, because not having Beldum and Metang on the bench while attacking means the deck doesn't really function. 2 TM Evolution allows you to get Metang early, or maybe Xatu, which is your main energy accelerator. Since you get screwed over by prizing so easily here, Daisy's help is included. Daisy draws you 2 cards and lets you look at your prizes. It's not a good card, hence the fact that this is probably the first time you're hearing about it. But if you want to make Metagross work, you need Daisy's help. And probably also a Psychiatrist's help. Because the version I showed you tops out at 280 damage with one chance to increase that to 310 with Kieran, I would recommend maybe swapping out the trolley for Maximum Belt. You could also switch Kieran for Black Belt's training, allowing you to one-shot Dragapult EX. Or better yet, why not throw in a copy of Lily's Clefairy EX? That makes Dragapult and Raging Bolt weak to your Psychic-type Metagross, helping greatly with those matchups. Elsewhere, while this does make Tulip a lot worse, the Psychic Beldum has just 60 hit points. The Metal one has 70. If you lose every time to Dragapult, try the 70 hit point one. You'll still lose to Dragapult regularly, but 1 out of 10 times you'll come close to winning and still lose. As you might have expected, I saved the worst for last. While For the Wind's feet are already sopping wet at the idea of playing another hit-and-run deck, Accelgor doesn't seem that great, especially with the loss of Radiant Sneasler to rotation. Regardless, for a Grass and a Colorless, Accelgor does 70 damage, confuses and poisons their active, then goes to the bench. This allows you to promote things like Pecharunt, Mimikyu, or Klefki, either boosting your damage or slowing them down. Add in Perilous Jungle, which increases poison damage during checkup by 20 to non-dark types, and you have a thing that exists. The list is fairly straightforward. Go for a full 4-4 line of Accelgor, have Crispin and Counterdane to get your Accelgor powered up, and then annoy them with actives like Mimikyu, Klefki, Pecharunt, and Cornerstone Masked Ogerpon, all of whom can attack thanks to your energy spread, but still will play a very small part in your success with Accelgor. At regular intervals in a battle, winning or losing will come down to confusion flips. So if you like to gamble, why not subscribe to me on Twitch? Who knows, you might get some great entertainment. Or you'll immediately regret the decision and wonder who would spend money on someone as depraved as me. There's plenty of other options for Accelgor, except each makes you wonder why you aren't playing a different deck. For added status damage, chuck in a copy of Volcanion EX. There's also the item-locking Tyranitar, which is just a good card to place in the active and attack with. Or how about Brute Bonnet plus Binding Mochi, which allows Accelgor to hit harder. Depending on how Accelgor plays out, you may also want to try something like Gravity Gemstone or Calamitous Wasteland to try and force their active to flip through confusion more often. Like I said at the top, all of these decks lose to Dragapult EX. If you can somehow avoid one of the most played decks in TCG Live, a lot of these have a chance to get you to Arceus Lead. Though I've made it to Arceus Lead with decks that barely function, so that doesn't mean much. Still, I'd recommend starting with Tyranitar, then moving to Lycanroc should you want to partake in some whacking off. If you have any fun ideas for Road Journey Together decks, let everyone know in the comments. And if I take that idea and use it in a video, I'll make sure to pretend like it's a Trust Your Pilot original so everyone continues thinking I'm a genius.